Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and quick quiz. What's the best bird? I'll go and give you a hint here. It's not a raven. Yeah, that's right. It's an eagle. Fly, eagles, fly. But for real, I hope everybody enjoyed their Thanksgiving weekend. I had an extended break myself. I do apologize about that, but we're back at it again, and we have a lot to talk about to start the week off with. A new game just got announced that Sony might be a little bit upset about, maybe even furious about, and I think when you see it, you'll probably understand why. A Nintendo exclusive might also be heading over to other platforms, and Xbox Game Pass just revealed an exciting new game that you absolutely shouldn't sleep on. Let's just go and get right into things, though, starting off with PlayStation's 30th anniversary. There's been a lot of rumors about this year's anniversary. This is a huge milestone for the PlayStation brand, and so far we haven't really heard anything official, but they did release a pretty cool nod for PlayStation 5 owners today. If you turn on your PlayStation 5, you'll be greeted by a notification that allows you to swap themes for previous PlayStation generations. This will essentially give you a custom dynamic theme that befits the iconic PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PS3, or PlayStation 4 if you want. This comes included with their old school sound effects, and right away, I swapped over to my favorite generation being the PlayStation 3. And I have to say, after hearing those PS3 sound effects on my PS5, it just took me back to some incredibly nostalgic times, to say the least. My only problem with how they're doing this, though, is that apparently these themes will only work for a limited amount of time, or at least that's how it sounds if I'm reading this correctly. They said, quote unquote, that for a limited amount of time, you can change parts of the PS5 design based on your favorite generation of PlayStation. So I'm hoping that they'll backtrack on that decision, because this really is just such a cool inclusion that should be a mainstay from this point forward. Now, Stalker 2 has been out for close to 2 weeks by this point, and there were a lot of early reviews that criticized its various bugs and issues. The thing is that apparently critics received an even buggier game than what we got with its day one patch. And I've already seen a few reviewers come back and say that, hey, what we got on day one is a huge improvement over what they reviewed, which kind of tells me that somebody did a disservice for this game. Whoever decided to give out broken review codes should seriously be questioned about this. It's just so misleading for potential customers. It doesn't really speak to the product that we're playing ourselves, and it does nothing but put a game like this in a tough situation. Now, thankfully, despite all of that and its middling scores, Stalker 2 is still selling very well, and its Steam reviews are now up to 83%. So it's doing good there too, which is, I think that says a lot about Stalker 2 and how good it is. But it seemingly keeps getting better. They just pushed out some new updates that reportedly addresses over 650 fixes. Yeah, that sounds pretty crazy on paper, and I can say firsthand, there might be some jank when it comes to Stalker 2. I think that's somewhat expected, given the unique situation and the unique issues that this studio has faced these past few years. But they still somehow managed to create a good hardcore survival experience, if that's something that you're looking for. And I think in 6 months' time, it's going to be even better than what it already is today. Now, there's also an interesting development taking place in real time, and some of this seems to be a little bit hush-hush. So what's happening here is that Triangle Strategy randomly got delisted from the Nintendo Switch eShop. Now, Square Enix isn't giving the exact reason why, but you can see where they said this in a tweet. Triangle Strategy is temporarily unavailable to purchase on Nintendo Switch eShop. Those who have already bought the game will be able to download it. We are working on this and will update when the game is able to be purchased again. So they're definitely working on this situation, and it will come back at a later point. Though at first glance, this might not necessarily seem all that interesting. But if we look at past Square Enix eShop delistings, we can almost predict what's about to happen. They did the exact same thing for Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 right before they got ported over to other platforms. Now, why would they do that, though? Why would they delist these games just to port them to other platforms? Well, that's because Nintendo previously had the publishing rights, and in order to change that, they have to delist the Nintendo published version to transfer it over to Square Enix. So, with that in mind, there is a pretty good chance that Triangle Strategy will soon be a multi-platform game, which fits right into the company's new mantra. Square Enix is no longer in arms for hire. While most people are kind of focused on Final Fantasy and PlayStation's exclusive deal, you have to remember that Square Enix also has a lot of exclusives under Nintendo. So it also goes for them. Anytime Square Enix has a chance, they will go completely multi-platform. This is good for their business, and it's also great for consumers, especially given that Triangle Strategy is one of the better modern RTS games that you can play. Okay, now let's go talk about PlayStation and this just almost blasphemous situation for them. I imagine PlayStation is having conversations about this as we speak, because Tencent just revealed a new game that might look a little more than familiar, to the point that this comes off as almost a shameless ripoff. This is Light of Motiram, and it's pretty easy to tell which game it was inspired by: the Horizon series. It's got the same visual art style, it's got the same cybernetic dinosaur designs, the world itself is very similar, and even the music style plays into the Horizon series. It's got that same tone and melody to it. I mean, it's one thing to be inspired by something, and then there's just flat out copying. Now, which one would you call this? That's kind of the question that a lot of people seemingly have right now, because even though the gameplay is, yes, different, Light of Motiram is a survival crafting game, whereas Horizon is more of an open world RPG. But because almost everything else is similar about these games, if you were unaware, as a lot of more casual people probably are, then you could possibly mistake Light of Motiram as a spinoff to the Horizon series. That's how similar these two are in their visual art style. I mean, even if you look at the key art, and I'll put this up on screen. Here's Horizon Zero Dawn. You can see Aloy on the left. She's looking into the big open world that she's about ready to explore. And in the distance, there's a robotic dinosaur. And now, here I'm going to go and put Light of Motiram on the screen. And, we have this different, albeit similar, red-headed woman. And she's also looking into the distance at, as you guessed, robotic creatures. That looks like they came straight out of the Horizon series. Again, there's inspiration, and then there's whatever you want to call this. It's clearly playing off of Horizon, and they're not trying to hide it whatsoever, and that's by design. Obviously, replicating a very popular franchise is a great way to garner recognition for a new IP like this, and it's clearly working for them. Now, can they toe the fine line of it just being a simple inspiration rather than it being a legal mess for them? And that's kind of the question that's going around, and it's actually the second time that we've had a conversation like this in 2024. Just earlier this year, Pocket Pair and Palworld faced very similar accusations. Despite their gameplay differences, a lot of people thought that Palworld may have plagiarized certain Pokemon designs. And when you look at the designs side by side, you can see why so many people felt the way that they did and still do. In fact, Nintendo and the Pokemon Company eventually filed a lawsuit against Pocket Pair, though interestingly, it wasn't for copyright infringement, but instead, it was for gameplay patents. Now, honestly, I don't think that Nintendo has much of a case for those patents. They were very generic patents, but I think the reason that they're taking Pocket Pair to court is to instill their power on these smaller companies. It's almost as if they're telling future competitors and similar inspirations that if you fly too close to the sun, that they will look into it and that they will take these companies to court with their, just endless amount of money. They absolutely will protect their IP if they feel threatened because they have the money to throw at them. And I look at this situation between Sony and Tencent in a very similar manner, albeit Tencent is a much larger company than what Nintendo was dealing with in Pocket Pair. Tencent is not a small company that you can simply bully around. So one question for Sony is just how much do they actually care about this situation? On one side, Horizon is a very important series to Sony. That's why they keep pushing it as much as they have. But does a shameless inspiration bother them to the degree that they would follow in Nintendo's footsteps and take them to court? Now, I'm not sure if they'll take it that far, in part because do they even have a case in the first place? Just because something looks similar doesn't mean that you can just simply take them to court. Again, the gameplay is still very different, so let me know what you all think about this situation. Do you view Light of Motiram as taking an inspiration too far, or do you think what Tencent is doing here is perfectly innocent? More so, what do you think about Light of Motiram and its gameplay? It can almost be described as a survival game set in the world of Horizon, and hey, that might be exciting for a lot of people. So let me know what you all think about the situation and this game in the comments below. Now, one last thing before we go, though. Xbox Game Pass just revealed yet another Activision game, and it'll be out on December 4th. So, hey, I mean, December is already getting off to a hot start with the upcoming Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and now you can also add Crash Team Racing Nitro Fuel to that list. I mean, this is a game that's widely considered as one of the absolute best kart racers of all time, and that's in large part because of its unique playstyle. Unlike the Mario Kart series, it's all about its drift and boost mechanics. Some people are just absolutely insane in this game. There is a very high skill level once you get good enough. I think one of the really cool things about its Game Pass release, though, is that this is a game that really kind of needs a boost for its community. It first released back in 2019, so as you might imagine, its community isn't quite necessarily as vibrant as it once was, but the inclusion of Game Pass could go a long way in revitalizing it once again. More on that, and this is just kind of me, putting out a little bit of a wish list here. What I'd like to see Microsoft do is to push for a PC release. It's always been a bit strange to me that Activision ported over Crash 1 through 4 and Spyro Reignited to PC, but for whatever reason, the one live service game that they have still remains on consoles only. I mean, the other games I just mentioned had a lot of success on PC, so I just think that this makes a lot of sense. But whatever the case may be, if you've yet to play Crash Team Racing, now kind of seems like the perfect time with Game Pass. This is a brilliant kart racer, and more people deserve to see exactly why. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and peace out.